Thank you for joining us, everybody. My name is Ross, President of SoCal EDPA. We have a really great call for you guys today. We're going to be meeting with Mindy Abel, who's the Deputy Director of the Anaheim Convention Center, and we believe she has some great things to talk about. So it's nice to have something positive to hear for a change, and more doom and gloom that it's all in the past. And just to start off, I want to thank our sponsors. We have the Exhibit Company, Image Options, B-Matrix, and Classic Exhibits, who help to support us to make these things possible, especially when we do get back to live events, which we hope to do maybe this summer, even with our own chapter. So more to come on that. And cool. Well, you didn't come to hear me talk, so I'm going to introduce Mindy and let her take over, and she'll talk about everything, and then she'll have some time for questions afterwards. So thanks, Mindy. How you doing?
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all. I got to tell you, this Zooming, we're all getting really good at it, but I think we're all ready to move on and be back face to face and really have the opportunity to be together again, whether starting out in meetings and conferences and growing back to what we know best. I have some information that I want to share with you today. So I'm going to open up my screen and get us started here. So Ross and I were going back and forth and communicating, and I, ended my email by saying that we're really excited for the news from the last couple of weeks, and certainly we feel like brighter days are ahead. And so Ross has made that our campaign, and I like it. It's really good news. Just to give you some, what have we been doing this last year as an industry? I'm sure many of you are aware, and that as an industry, we decided early on that we needed to take note of where we stood and what needed to happen as we all overnight closed. In Anaheim, we were show ready. It was Monday of Natural Products Expo West. We had been moving in for a week. We had all of the product in place. We had some smaller meetings had already occurred, and the fallout from exhibitors coming in and exhibiting companies and attendees started to really ramp up over the weekend. Come Monday, the event closed. So as we were about to do the ribbon cutting, that was all gone. Short order, by June, our industry came together and formed the California Convention Center Coalition. We worked putting together these guidelines and submitted it to our state, to the governor's office, to the California Department of Public Health, because we knew that was the first step to gain agreement that as an industry, we really shared within this plan that we're the locations with the largest spaces. We can do physical distancing like no other. All the protocols, hand sanitizers, et cetera, we already have that in place. So, again, we just went through the process to really get the information out there. Fast forward, or maybe slow forward, not any traction at all. So here we are, turning the calendar page, and it's 2021. We know the cycle of our business really is 12 to 18 months out. So we did a big campaign getting that information out there. We wanted to educate the assembly and really gain the traction that we needed through CalTravel and Visit California. And again, a coalition of labor unions came together and really started to really beat our chest as the news got better, as conditions and the rates of COVID decreased. We were kind of always the last note. It was, this is what industries can do. And in the yellow tier, as the tier system came out, and convention centers. We were always that, and convention centers, period, and the discussion's over. So it was very frustrating. We were getting no attention, and we were continuing as an industry in our state to have hard conversations with our clients. And many of them were forced to look outside of our state. The Rose Bowl is a great example. NCAA, leading up to March Madness, we all had regional activities, but those events, while indoor sports and outdoor sports were happening, they couldn't happen in California, and it drove these competitions to go outside of our state, to go to Texas. So The good news is we have advanced from that point, and we have our blueprint. A few weeks ago, we've got what was a simplified version that fell in line with different industries. This is an example of the indoor seated and live events and performances. Basically, you know, with all these conditions and knowing what the industry is meeting, for instance, like a cheer or a dance competition, we know they can be at 25 to 35% based on just a whole checklist of things. As of Monday, an update came out, and now they were encouraging zones of seating for, you know, and this affects indoor stadiums and outdoor stadiums as we open up baseball, as basketball continues. So now they're talking about areas where you can have vaccinated areas where people can sit, and proof of negative tests and things like that. So they keep adding to all of this, but the good news is we are weeks away from the best news, which is June 15th. So many of you know that, you know, that's a big date for most of our state. We can open without restrictions. The tiered system goes away, and we just have to stay on track with the pace of vaccinations. As of yesterday, we were at 24 million. I was on a call Friday with Natural Products, you know, as we were planning for 22 next year. And we were at 21 million when I spoke to them on Friday. So fast forward to yesterday, we're at 24 million. So from the ability to get vaccines into our population, you know, that's happening. The levels of COVID positivity and the taxing on our healthcare system remains low and continues to be low at this point. So, I mean, we're on track for the 15th, and we're really excited about that. Of course, with the June 15th announcement came everything except for ... venues and convention centers, period. You know, here we were, the end of that sentence once again. What we did get out of that was that we can open with events up to 5,000 without restrictions. And that includes cleanliness restrictions. It includes physical distancing, no larger aisles for trade shows, all of those things. The good news, and we're talking to groups that, you know, will come out and say our attendance is 20,000, but by day, you know, it could be a 5,000 person event. We're working to get clarity from the state on that 5,000 number, because we know very well that in Anaheim, you know, with 1.8 million square feet of space, 5,000 people, you know, we can do well more than that. So we're continuing to see if that's a moving target. On the coalition, we have every other week calls now instead of weekly calls. And we had somebody from the state on our last call and said that October 1st could be a moving target. They originally were talking about August 1st, but they wanted to come out with the June 15th date. And with that said, they're going to continue to work on fine tuning what they know. And we knew that from Monday, getting updates and guidelines. I wanted to share another good news. You know, most of the, I would say all of the buildings in California that were part of the coalition, we all received and applied for and received the GBAC accreditation. It was a checklist of protocols that really addresses cleanliness. And so we all checked the box on that to assure people as they come back that their safety and cleanliness, and really to provide the secure environment that we want groups to be able to share with their attendees. They can expect that from you know, a return. All of us invested in Clorox 360 foggers, only to have 2 weeks ago the CDC say it's not a surface transmission with COVID-19, it's an airborne transmission. So these deep cleaning between sessions and moving the speakers versus moving the attendees, all of those conversations that we've had for the last 10 months, they go to the wayside. That's good news. It's not putting people at risk, but it's also assuring people, you know, that they can return safely, and we have protocols in place. And finally, I just want to share, moving forward, you know, we've been busy during this time, not only through advocacy and you getting people aware of what we do and the timeline and the runway that we need to get things accomplished. We've put resources together on the Visit Anaheim website, which is our marketing arm, about not only safety, but cleanliness and ways that groups can move forward. And we include information about our partners, and it's a resource tool that people can use and plan for as they move forward. Some other things that are probably not going to go away is planning for health and safety. So we have a health and safety checklist that we have developed, and it's a communication tool that we work with our groups to really collaborate on what the expectations will be. What will we do as a community, as a campus? What will they do as an organization and an event? That we've taken, Visit Anaheim has aligned with Hoag, which is a healthcare provider in Orange County. They have put together some turnkey options to review a health and safety plan, mostly on the health side for organizations, also act as a consultant if need be. So if a group wants to have temperature screening and health checks as a first, port of entry for someone, they have a program put together and a price point. So it's off the shelf, ready to go as groups start to return. They'll review a health and safety plan as part of their agreement with us in Anaheim at no cost to an organization. So we want to give our events the tools, the pathway to reopening, and collaborate with them, very closely as they set to return. So I've done a lot of talking and a lot of what have we been busy doing. I want to open it up to the group on the call, and how it continued the discussion. If there's one area of particular interest, or let's just have a conversation, because I think it's a dynamic group of people here who are ready to get back to work, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, or again, open the dialogue up for everyone.
I guess my first question to you is, I'm excited that Anaheim's ready to go, but what about a couple of the convention centers like San Diego and Long Beach, who are housing people? Are they further out in this process?
That's a great question. So I can tell you, again, as Convention Center Coalition, we're all on these calls together, and we work really closely with one another. Through this closure, we have been open for business, supporting our community. We, early on, we're an emergency operations center where we receive donations to help with food distribution. As a community, again, we were ready for natural products. So all of our hotels, all of our convention center, we had food products. We were ready to go with, the things that we needed to do to welcome the community here. So instead of having it spoil, all of us worked on ways to contribute it back into the food stream, into our community, to help those who were being laid off or furloughed and, found themselves in a, we wanted to help in the community, and we had great resources to do that. We've been a drive-up testing location since last June, and April 30th, we're closing as a drive-up testing location. So we have slowly been reducing our footprint in that regard. We opened up as a super point of distribution for vaccines, and on average see about 5,000 people a day coming to the convention center, coming into Hall A and getting their first or second vaccine, or up until Monday, just one vaccine with J&J. So we've operated in that regard. So have many of the centers. Long Beach, as you noted, and San Diego are also assisting with migrant and immigration, and FEMA in particular, to work with getting people into foster homes, foster situations, not necessarily homes, but in, it's kind of like that first point of entry, if you will. Those are limited contracts. So as we ramp back up into operation, I know specifically San Diego is contracted through the middle of July, and they do have groups contracted well beyond that. Most of the groups that we had coming in it's a combination of us not having guidelines until 2 weeks ago, but it's also a combination of their industry not really being ready to return. As people become vaccinated, as people return to flying, many of our fall events are looking at being much reduced in size. So they're saying they're expecting maybe 50% of what they expected to 75%. We had a group that was coming in May, and now they're coming in August, and they're considering looking at dates in December because they feel that their attendee base, from exhibition companies to attendees to the meeting content that would accompany it, that to gain the confidence and to really feel like it's the right time to get back out there, all of those factors are really pushing us into the third and fourth quarter. So again, a long answer to your question, but I can tell you those facilities will be ready because this was a short-term agreement. We're not displacing any confirmed groups or business activity that we had in. Most of those things are moving further just so that the attendee base could feel comfortable in returning.
Do you think that they've talked about like having the shows in the smaller venues because they're going to be like smaller shows and stuff, but do you think that would be more the case, or do you think like they'll come to more of a larger convention center like yours where they could actually spread people out, like a lot more people into different halls and just maybe open the show up more at the facility to have a...
That's a good question. In the conversations we've had, early on, it was, I'm holding our open space so that you can expand. Here we are today, where now we can have the same aisles. We can have the same spacing between, booth to booth. The parameters in a theater style set, we're limited to capacity, but that doesn't mean that you wouldn't have to sit any further apart. We've always kind of as a standard set, let's say if you're meeting in a classroom setting, it's 2 feet per person. Now they're saying maybe 3 feet's okay. Maybe perceptually they wouldn't set it quite that way, so it's really working with the design of the event versus what is allowed from a physical distancing perspective. Like all of the stickers, stand here, all of that is going to be kind of self-modulated. It's going to really start to change. An analogy for me, in some of my conversations, early on when we went to the grocery store, we all stood outside. We have our physical distancing of, 6 feet-ish. Then we go into the store and, everybody was very respectful of space. 10 months later, you go into Costco or Home Depot and, it's kind of business as usual. And a Costco or a Home Depot is really a trade show floor. They have products. They have people who are, picking up the product, deciding whether to buy it or not. It's kind of our laboratory, get ready for what the future is going to be like. They're already assimilated back to the norms of where they were 10 months ago. I feel like once we get open, we're going to be right there. And it's going to be up to the event, working alongside with the building to feel comfortable and make people feel safe and protected when they're in that space.
And Mindy, if I could, I guess, address the pink elephant in the room. Transportation show got pulled. Do you think that was the driving force in making things go forward as fast as they're going now, or was that already steps in progress to move forward to where you are now and progressing forward past that?
Yeah, that one hurt. We actually have been working so closely with APTA, and we moved them 3 times. They were such great partners. And, without guidelines, their trade show, they have a big public facing component of that trade show. And, we had, that go or no go date moved, many, many times. So I think that was a contributing factor to getting guidelines. I do believe because hospitalizations going down, many counties going into the red and orange zones. You know, it was the momentum of the vaccines. All of that came together at the same time. And we did gain traction. Unfortunately, we were like 2 weeks too late. And the good news is they're working on a replacement year to be back with us, and we can't wait for that. But you know, it kind of hurt. You know, we have the Orange County Auto Show, and so our 5,000 number expires on October 1st. That show opens on October 2nd. So, you know, that's good news. You know, a lot of our other events that, you know, attendees wise, we're going to be okay from a regional perspective. I think, you know, again, that was good news. But yeah, that one hurt. That was APTA for sure. And again, the restrictions and the lack of ability for their planning, that cost us.
Has there been any talk about like whether shows will want to try and require or ask about vaccinations, or if people have been vaccinated?
You know, it's interesting because we do work with a lot of medical events, and in our conversations, they're saying, well, I know our attendees, I know our members will be vaccinated because they're in the healthcare community. And for the most part, they're all vaccinated already. What they don't know are the exhibit base, you know, and I do get asked the question of our team and the hotels, will that be a requirement? We are a city-owned and operated City of Anaheim building, and I can tell you that the city will not require vaccination as a condition for return to work for those that have not been working, and those are mostly our part-time employees. I can also tell you, just being a super vaccination center, that we were able to be and participate in receiving vaccinations within the last 4 weeks. Maybe a little bit sooner than our threshold because they didn't want any to go to waste. And within the city, we had a system to bring people in to not let any vaccines go to waste. I mean, they dose them out, and you know, at the end of the day, if they have some vaccines ready to go, they wanted to make sure people were receiving them. And I would say, just Mindy, my personal observation, for our staff, over 70% of our frontline workers got vaccinated. They know they're face to face with everybody coming in, and they have been through this whole pandemic, making sure that they're in a safe environment, making sure that they feel comfortable working here is like job one. And then if we can communicate that to our groups, who can communicate that to those that they're bringing into our community, you know, I think that's an important message. But you know, it kind of falls into the statistics. It's up to the group whether they do temperature checks. It's up to the organization to require proof of vaccination. It's certainly not something a building would require. Another thing to note, like what are the first groups we're going to see? The groups that are able to kind of turn on a dime, we're seeing, you know, again, dance, cheer, volleyball, those regionalized events are able to really pull the trigger and have the fan base to meet and make it happen. Corporate meetings are definitely third quarter, ready to do some face-to-face meetings. A lot of talk about a hybrid. Hybrid isn't new. People are tired of conversing and getting content this way. I mean, some of you are checking emails. I know it, like something's popping up and you know, you can't help but like, you know, just peek at it, right? But when you're face to face and having those conversations, you know, you really, the synergies that you get, you know, you just can't replace that. So we're seeing corporations saying we need to pull our sales force together, and you know, many industries have thrived during this time. Ours not so much, but we'll be able to recoup eventually. But getting these smaller regionalized events here will help us, you know, first steps.
We did have a question in the chat. Do you have any specific protocols in place during installation and dismantle for the labor crews For example, one point of entrance required temperature checks and mask wearing.
4 weeks ago, we would have probably required that. Again, it's up to the organization. So whoever's installing the show, they will have protocols. The only requirement we have are masks. That's it. Don't show up to work if you have a temperature. I mean, all those things. So really the only requirements as of June 15th is to continue to wash your hands and wear a mask.
Will you guys be giving out masks, if like have disposable masks available for people that show up without them? Not that they would, but or
We won't be giving them out. Again, it's up to the event. We're just kind of the facilitator. We do have kind of a grab and go market that's under construction in the lobby that will be in place in the fall. So we would have products like that available for purchase, but you know, we do have our masks we supply them for our teams. So you'll see standardized masks. You know, when we started to see like animal prints and, you know, everybody's freedom of expression kind of happened with the masks, which is great. You know, you don't want to curtail that, but we have a level of professionalism. And, you know, again, we're welcoming about 5,500 of people a day just to get vaccinated between staffing and those coming to get vaccinated. So as the Anaheim Convention Center, we have, you know, uniforms and standards. And so, you know, we have a requirement for masks. We continue to do temperature checks for our team. Not sure how long that will be something that's required as we move out of this, but we'll see how it all comes together. I mean, it's just exciting how the conversations have changed. We have had regularly scheduled calls with all of our groups. We've been doing addendums and, you know, moving groups, and it's been, you know, not a lot of seeing new business confirming. And in the last week and a half, the inquiries and the new business, 22, the first open date, maybe we might have some space next August, but it is filling up fast. And it's really encouraging. You know, we have NAM in January. We're completely expecting it to be NAM of 2 years ago. So it's just like the right time to be back full force. So we're looking forward to 22.
nice. Matthew, do you have a question?
Yes. Mindy, do you guys have a schedule up on your website of events? And we all know that the cancellations may happen due to whatever COVID stuff, but is there something up that we can go like download or take a look at?
You know, I doubt that it's very current because it's just been the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and we're still moving a lot of things through the end of 21. But I'll make note of that and make sure that that's a priority as we start to open up and schedule events.
Okay.
Right now, we have things through mid-June, and they're all sports related. You know, again, after mid-June, it's our larger trade shows we're not quite yet final with an annual trade show to be here in August. It's moving dates, but within the next week that will become public. So that I would say in the next 2 weeks, we should have some really solid information up there because again, now that we have this path to opening, it's go mode. Like boards are coming together and meeting and they're making decisions. You know, last week it was like we were on a roller coaster. It was good news, good news, good news as we were going up. And then, you know, I had a regional group say, we can't do our trade show this year because
We call it the groundhog effect.
Yeah.
Pop your head up and look around.
So give us a couple weeks as
Yeah.
final decisions specifically for 21. 22, some small movement. Some of our 22 big trade shows, we're looking at potentially looking at other dates, but now again, with the good news, with lower infection rates, the rest of the economies were opening up. They're probably going to stay put. The biggest thing next year is international travel. I think we're still going to see hesitancy to come to the US, which is going to affect the size of a lot of our events.
Thank you.
Mindy, has your organization facility done any work to address the technical hybrid aspect of shows from an electronic standpoint, adding more technology to the building that would enhance a hybrid and digital aspect? Because if, like you just said, international travel is huge. That's everything I keep hearing. So if those people aren't coming, and then there's a percentage of those that won't come anyway, no matter what, the dependence upon digital and technical will be at an all-time high. So that piques my interest if your organization has either done or discussing that type of addition to the building.
Yes, we went through, I would say last August, everybody was popping up with their studios on site. I mean, I walked every china closet. I looked at every inch of space, like where I don't want to take sellable space and make that a virtual studio, right? And you don't really need that big a footprint. A lot of the buildings across the country who created studios had spaces that were, fixed amphitheater styles or locations where it really made sense. And, we like to be flexible with our space and kind of become whatever the needs are of the event. So with that being said, we wanted to look at solutions. And so Smart City is our technology provider exclusively. Encore is our preferred provider, but not exclusive, for presentations in the building. So we worked alongside to put together some menus, if you will, kind of like a catering menu. Here's package 1, 2, 3. Here's like the starter set, and everything's customizable. So from streaming and broadcasting, putting together some price points that people could plan well for. And then also with presentations, what is the bare minimum? And then what are some options to add on to that? So with that, we came up with our mobile studio offering. And we actually, on last week, Thursday, on Global Meetings Industry Day, Visit Anaheim sent out a press release. And what I can do is forward it to Ross after this meeting, a link to the site, which is our brochure, that kind of, speaks to much of that. The other thing that we discovered through this process is around the corner, about a mile away, is a turnkey studio, VCI Technologies, who entered into an agreement, again, with Visit Anaheim, similar to our Hoag medical agreement, to have a provider full studio setup. They do a lot of work with Disney and other local entities. We toured the facility, and they put together, something that's just slightly off the campus, but again, as a studio, could really be your build out, if you will. So we have some options. We have something on site, and we also have something off site, but it's a planning tool. And again, like catering, nobody comes to the catering menu, or nobody comes to and says, I'll take, this package. Everything's negotiable based on what the needs are, from live streaming to content capturing. All of those things are going to be really, they're here to stay. I think they've been there. We've just formalized it a little bit more by having some options, to review up front.
And another question in the chat. There are some areas of the country that are currently showing a large increase in COVID cases. If that becomes a trend in Anaheim, will that change or affect the reopening plans?
As of yesterday, we get daily COVID counts, and what they're seeing is surges. At some point you have to almost stop listening to the news. For me, that's what I do. they're going to take the sound bites, and they were expecting a surge post spring break and post Easter, but what they're finding now is demographically it's hitting the younger age range. Statistically, every week we review this on Wednesday with our safety team. 98% of those who have reported and have had COVID-19 have recovered. I mean, the death rate and the numbers are really disheartening. But percentage-wise, the recovery rate is what you have to kind of look at. Again, with vaccinations, I think we'll be in a good position as long as bed counts and ICU availability remains strong, meaning that it's open and it's not being taxed. And those are the numbers and metrics that will really secure our June 15th, we're done with this blueprint tier system that's very confusing and interpretive a number of different ways. One other thing to note, that as we did get our guidelines, who's going to monitor the 25%? Who's going to regulate, what is acceptable? And the answer that we have from the state is the same jurisdiction as when we didn't have restrictions. Everybody thought at some point that we'd be working through the county, which in Orange County, they're here as our long-term tenant with vaccinations and testing, that they would be the portal to say, you're good, you're not good, your plan looks great, it doesn't look good, you need to do this. County isn't going to be that. Cal OSHA is the regulating body, and Orange County sheriffs and the CHP are the authority in our industry. They're not going to hotels. They're not going to convention centers. They don't want to see our plans. It's up to us to do the right thing and follow the letter of the guidelines and to work with our groups accordingly. But I mean, that's just kind of an interesting development, again, over the last few weeks.
I have another question. In the event that during an install or during the run of a show that one of the attendees or workers comes down, starts running a fever or whatever that they didn't have prior to, is there a plan in place at the convention center? Is there a place to isolate them? Or I mean, you don't have to go into all the details. I just want to know, is there a protocol in place, and who we as like an EAC working there, who are we supposed to notify? Is it the show organizer or is it the building?
It's a great question. So with our health and safety guideline that we work with each group, that is a big section, like when you identify, contact tracing. So this is something that the organization is responsible for, but it's our responsibility to ensure that they have that in their plan. And we will, I believe moving forward, that is something that's not going to go away. Security, prior to this pandemic, we were working with security plans with groups. And, we had an incident, it feels like it was 10 years ago, but it wasn't, where social media caught at the last day of an event, a report of a shooter in the building. Somebody was moving out and knocked over a display, and they thought it was a gunshot. And so people screamed, shooter, and started running out of the building. It turned out to be a fire drill for us, because within 2 minutes, our SWAT team, a helicopter, like our infrastructure of security and safety, went instantly into gear. It was a great learning experience. We had a lot of debriefings after that. Thankfully, it was not a shooting experience. It was just a loud noise, and there had been incidences within the last 2 weeks that were in the news. So people were a little afraid about that. But what it taught us was that from a safety protocol, groups need to have, what happens when, what's the line of communication? And, a lot of organizations said, well, we know as a building, you give us your emergency plan and that's our plan. But does your staff know that? Do the EACs know that? You don't know, they don't. So we were working on really communicating and collaborating on that end of things. Now, cleanliness and pandemic protocols or any incident, like if there's a flu bug or, other things that we need to a system have in place, those are all part of the planning process moving forward. Our document's about 6 pages, not filled out, and it gets filled out together. And again, it's the organization's responsibility, but it's the building's responsibility to understand what the organization is going to do, and being able to isolate someone, being able to provide a rapid test, all of those things to determine whether or not it's a false alarm. That's all part of the protocols. So you would work with the event, but we would be there to support, with the resources that we have.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I feel like my answers are really long, but there's a lot of backstory to it.
There's a lot of information out there to give, so.
It's not yes or no. It's like, but boy, I mean, again, much of our conversations were, we're doing overnight cleaning. You're responsible for between sessions. We don't know what the trade show floor is going to look like. If you have to have, everyone's like, do we need wider aisles? And then, God forbid, do we need directional arrows on the aisles? I'm like, no, those don't work. People don't pay attention to that. So we've moved well beyond all of that. The signage that we're going to have in place, we have an event on a week from Saturday, and it's a dance competition in the ballroom. And the only thing we're going to have is masks. Masks are required in this building. Wear your mask.
I know like the one area where, where people would tend to congregate would be for registration. Are you thinking of maybe doing that as an indoor-outdoor type thing, or just outdoors, or is there any protocol for that, or is it just going to be social distancing? It's like you're standing in line at Costco or something.
June 15th, that goes away.
Oh.
So we're not required to provide that, but I can tell you organizationally, events are looking at still creating that safety zone, that buffer. But again, it's part of our conversation with groups, but it won't be a requirement. Capacities in restaurants go away. All the things that have become second nature to our lives go away.
Well, that's my birthday, so that's a great birthday present. So, in my opinion, June 15th. So, I'll take it.
Yes, I know. We're all overthinking it a little bit. We're like, so then does that mean? And we're like, no, it does. It means, except for convention centers, we can only have 5,000 people. But if you have an event where you're asking for proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test within 72 hours, you can go above 5,000.
And you don't know if that 5,000 is going to be based on like how much space you have. It's just 5,000.
So this call a week ago, a gentleman who's been serving on the task force, he's a retired Marine. He's with the Health and Human Services Department in San Diego, and he's been on many task force. And he said, originally the date was going to be August 1st, but as they were rolling everything out, they said, August 1st may not be long enough. Let's just say October 1st. Again, me personally, it's coincidental that the federal government fiscal year ends on September 30th, and all of a sudden this goes away on October 1st. Certain other federal programs end on the 30th. I don't know. That's me just spending way too much time looking at all this stuff, but that October 1st could change. I asked the question, 5,000, what does that mean? Is that per group, per space? Certainly 5,000 for us is something that's easy to do. We could do 5,000 in the arena alone. There's no clarity on that. And he said not to read into it too much at this point.
I know that Chicago is looking at part of their reopening plan. They're limiting numbers like for the convention center, but if you're vaccinated, you don't count as a number towards capacity. So if it's 5,000 people, but I'm vaccinated, I don't count in that 5,000. So I'm a free person basically. So you might throw that in there.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully when June 15th hits, we'll have more clarity on what that is. And,
Right.
what we're seeing is any number, whether it's a percentage of or whatever, staff and vendors don't count. So you don't
Oh.
have to count that into your mix.
Oh, okay. So it's just attendees of the show. So, oh, well, that helps, because then, I mean, staff for a booth and all that could count for like 2,500 people easily for a decent sized show. So,
I mean, we're still seeing, as I said, it's getting the attendees to the events. Budgets have been cut, even in industries that have thrived, travel, all of those things. So that's going to affect the events. And so the events that we have through the end of the year, they're saying, what's our break even? They want to go into this and say, we're just going to break even. Like, what's our number just to have an event? Because we can't afford as a brand to not have an event. And we're like, we can't afford as your brand partner for you not to have an event. Are you guys having more conversations with a lot of your repeat groups and customers? What are you seeing out there, pulse-wise?
we're seeing smaller shows in, the southern states happening. I certainly have a lot more quote requests in the last week than I've had in the last few months. So I hope that's across the board. But yeah, a lot less cancellations and a lot more positive news, I would say.
Right.
So, Ross, are you feeling that as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm having like little things trickle in, but and then I'm talking to some clients for booths at the end, towards the end of the year, like in November. So I think people are still just waiting to see if it's going to happen or not. So I'm sure it's going to be a mad rush to create quotes and designs in like October or something, but yeah, so then I've been hearing that too, that, people have been getting quoted. There's some, especially some of the bigger companies, especially.
Yeah, I think it was crazy. It was Chris that was saying on our call last night that they don't even have the floor plan for World of Concrete set yet, and that's supposed to happen in like 6 weeks.
Oh wow, and they need to start moving that show in like almost 6 weeks early.
Yeah,
the equipment's so big.
So it's nothing set in stone. I guess they don't know how many halls they're going to need yet, or how much parking lot space, but they're not even, there's maps on the website, but those are the original maps. They haven't redone them yet. So it's really just kind of, up in the air, which I think is kind of insane, and would probably make someone like Mindy like be pulling her hair out that she has no idea what's going to be happening at her venue in 6 weeks. But
No, we're let's do it. Let's
yeah,
done. And
I
it was
think
fun.
that the fatigue is everyone is, let's just do it. Everyone's tired of it all. So
We working with the county with the vaccine sites. So, they started with the early in December as vaccines were coming out. What they did, the county said, we're not the pros on this. So they went to the Orange County Fire Authority, and they're the folks that go and attack a wildfire. So they know how to deploy, resource, get everything they need. So they went through, setting up the point of distribution in the Disney parking lot. And then with the inclement weather and the rain, that very few days of rain, but the wind and other things, the cold for us, they really wanted to look at us as a venue. And so we walked through the plan with them, and long story short, again, every story's a long story with me. They're like, wow, you guys are really good at planning and events. We should have brought you in long ago to like help us, get out there and do it. And we're like, no, this is what we do. We just haven't been able to do this. We haven't been allowed to do this. And they're like, well, we're going to recruit you for the next wildfire because you mobilized and help us, do everything we needed to do. So our industry, people do not know what we do as an industry. Still.
For
Funny
sure.
you say that because Ross and Steve and I were on a call yesterday with some Congress people in Southern California. And throughout those calls, 2 calls actually, and throughout those calls, I think you guys would agree. I don't think they really understood exactly what we do at the Congress level.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely that kind of message that they had this kind of blank look on the face when we were saying about what we did. Just kind of strange. You'd think people would know more.
I think we need a video presentation or a PowerPoint because you have to show pictures. Whenever I tell people what we do, I'm like these things, I built these. It's like, but yeah, they don't get it unless they've been there before.
Right. And as people are coming to get vaccinated, we're queuing them in through the arena just because at certain times there could be a line. And it's just people walk in and they're like, oh, I went to this concert here, or the auto shows here. Are you guys big enough? They have no idea that we have 5 other halls in the space that they're going in. And we're like, oh, just, you should see what we have upstairs. Just wait, there's more.
Yeah, I'm in Texas and we joke that the people doing the vaccine should be the people that run Chick-fil-A, because if you've ever been to a Chick-fil-A, they have it down. You're taking your orders in the parking lot, they take your money, and then you pull around the building and there's the food. And we're saying get those people. That should be our target for employees as we restaff, is that we're going to start stealing all the Chick-fil-A employees because they seem very streamlined and efficient.
I'm in Georgia and I refute to let our Chick-fil-A people go.
Sorry, we have In-N-Out out here.
Anaheim, we had a great event with them a year ago, or whatever that was. I've lost track of time. This last year has made it all fuzzy.
Is Chick-fil-A even big in California? Is it out there? Or?
Yeah, it's getting bigger. It's not. I mean, In-N-Out's a lot bigger, obviously, but Chick-fil-A is really kind of getting bigger. It seems.
We'll
more
swap
of
you
them
some
around
of
now.
those. We'll give you some Chick-fil-A's if you'll give us some In-N-Out.
Well, see, and you say that, Mike, we have In-N-Out in Dallas and we've had it for years now. And I don't really eat there because there's not that many of them, but they're around. It's sort of like the thing I save when I go to the West Coast. I'll go to the In-N-Out in California, or I'll go to the In-N-Out in Vegas, but I just don't go to the one here that
First
often.
place I go when the wheels touch down.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, though, that like with Chick-fil-A and the service levels, this is a time where we've said, every year when you do budgets or you work on your marketing plan, you're like, oh, let's do this. Oh, this trend, let's do more and more and more. And then you always ask yourself, what are we going to stop doing? Right. But we never stop doing things until, because we've always done it this way, or our customers still want us to do this. But we've taken a look at some things, and one thing we're not doing anymore is cash. We're completely cashless. We got rid of, we're not going to be able to do change for anybody. The ATMs are gone. People will have to bring in ATMs. We don't want to be in the cash business anymore. So that's another touch point that goes away. Stadiums and large venues are all going that way as well. So from concessions to parking or anywhere where there's an exchange, it's all credit card, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and it's PCI compliant and it's clean and it should speed things up, hopefully. But yeah, that's one change we made. But those are things that you have to look at. Is what do we want to stop doing and what do people really want us to do? So bring your credit cards in Anaheim. Don't bring any cash.
The baseball stadium here, our new stadium opened up, and it's cashless too. So,
but this is being closed. Like now, you can open up and not be doing something. Like it's harder to transition when you're open for business and you're like, well, as of June 1st, we're not doing this. Well, as of today, we're not doing this.
I don't think anybody on this call takes cash.
But yeah, it's just an example. You know,
I'll accept gold bullion as payment. That's not a problem.
Give me Bitcoin. I'll take Bitcoin.
maybe we, you know, we put in like 200 additional hand sanitizing stations. So now it's high visibility, right? We always had them, but now here's another place that you can sponsors, you know, you can sell our hand sanitizers. You know, there's different, you know, revenue models, not models, but revenue opportunities, I think. So what do you have in your building now? What can we label? What can we sell to our exhibitors? So we kind of looked at that too. We're like, sure, I'll sell my hand sanitizers. They're staying there. You didn't have to bring them in. You don't have to supply the information or the content, but you can sell them.
Well, this is great. It was a great
Yeah.
discussion and very informative. I don't know if anybody else have any other questions for Mindy. I
You guys
guess
are hungry. Foster Freeze, El Pollo Loca.
that's what happens when you do a thing during lunch. You know, everybody's thinking of food right now. So
Well, you know what? I will post my email if anybody has any questions or I could ever help you out in Anaheim. Happy to do so. And we cannot wait to see you here. Oops, can't spell Anaheim. Hold on. That's me.
That I before E or E before I, which one is it? And
Anaheim. It's a good German name.
I'm from Georgia. We can't spell. Sorry.
Okay, it gets, and it's Mindy Abel. So Mabel, you can call me Mabel. I've had that happen before. Mostly in an email when someone's trying to sell me something, you know, dear Mabel, and I'm like, don't do that.
Spam.
But no, it's nice to find you guys, and look forward to your next call. I'll be there. I love hearing what's going on and staying informed. But again, it is brighter days ahead. Let's go. Let's get those inquiries in there. Let's get back to business.
definitely, it sounds great. Yeah, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you for meeting with us. It was a lot of fun. Awesome.
Look
Well,
forward to seeing you all soon.
yeah, sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Enjoy your day.
Bye.